What the hell is this?
I'm Jake, 29 years old, working as a software engineer in Seattle. My girlfriend Emma and I had been together for 3 years when everything fell apart. We first connected at a mutual friend's birthday gathering back in 2022, instantly bonding over our shared obsession with terrible action movies and Indian cuisine. Those first few months were incredible, filled with late-night conversations and weekend adventures exploring the city. After about 18 months of dating, we decided to move in together. Life felt absolutely perfect, like we'd figured out the secret formula to a happy relationship. Until one random Tuesday when my entire world got flipped completely upside down. I was deep in a project sprint meeting with my development team, discussing our upcoming deadlines and feature priorities when my phone buzzed against the conference table. Emma's text message lit up the screen. "Hey babe, gave your Camry to Melissa. She had some errands to run and her vehicle's getting repaired. Hope you don't mind." I stared at those words on the screen, trying to process what I was reading. My first reaction was confusion, then frustration started bubbling up. Melissa was someone Emma knew from her university days. A friend I'd met maybe 4 or 5 times total at various social gatherings and dinner parties over the years. She seemed pleasant enough, but seriously disorganized, the type who constantly ran late to everything or forgot about commitments entirely. We definitely weren't close friends by any measure, and Emma knew perfectly well how particular I was about my car. My 2019 Toyota Camry in metallic gray wasn't anything fancy or expensive, just a reliable sedan. But it represented something important to me. I'd worked hard and saved up to buy it, managed to pay off the entire loan ahead of schedule, and kept it in immaculate condition with regular maintenance appointments and weekly washing sessions. The car was my responsibility, my property, something I took pride in maintaining. I typed out a response, attempting to keep my frustration under control. Would have been nice to ask me first, but whatever, I guess. When's she planning to bring it back? 3 long hours crawled by at an agonizing pace. My meeting finally wrapped up. I grabbed a sandwich from the company cafeteria, responded to several work emails that had piled up, and then another text message arrived from Emma that made my stomach drop. So Melissa just called me. The car was stolen. She parked it outside the Target store on Riverside Drive, went inside for shopping for maybe 20 minutes, and when she came back out, it had completely vanished. She's already filed a report with the police. I'm really, really sorry, babe. My heart plummeted like I'd just dropped from the top of a roller coaster. The feeling was immediate and intense, a mixture of shock, anger, and disbelief all hitting me at once. I immediately called her number, not even caring that I was standing right in the middle of the office with colleagues nearby who could hear everything. "Emma, what the actual hell happened?" I demanded, my voice probably louder than it should have been. She started trying to explain herself, saying she understood. She should have asked me first, but Melissa was desperate for help, and I'd been stuck in back-to-back meetings all morning, and she thought it would be fine for just a quick errand. I interrupted her, asking where exactly this theft supposedly happened. She told me the Target on Riverside Drive near the big shopping center. Melissa claimed she was only inside the store for about 20 minutes, browsing and picking up a few things, and when she walked back to where she'd parked, the car had simply disappeared from the spot. I asked if Melissa had actually filed a police report already. Emma confirmed she had, saying Melissa was currently at the police station giving her complete statement to the officers. They told her they would need to contact me directly to confirm all the details since the vehicle registration was in my name. I forced myself to take several deep breaths, attempting to calm the rising panic that was threatening to overwhelm me completely. "Okay, I'll handle this situation," I told her, trying to sound more composed than I felt. We need to talk about this when I get home tonight." She asked if I was upset with her, her voice small and worried. "We'll discuss it later, Emma," I said, and ended the call. I wasn't just mad exactly. I was confused, deeply frustrated, and experiencing something else I couldn't quite identify or name. The entire situation felt fundamentally wrong, like when you detect smoke somewhere but can't locate the actual fire. Melissa had always seemed unreliable and scattered, constantly showing up late to events, forgetting plans we'd made, that sort of chronic disorganization. But this situation was extreme and bizarre, even by her questionable standards. The police department called me around 6 in the evening, just as I was shutting down my computer and packing up my desk to leave the office. "Mr. Anderson, this is Officer Thompson from the Auto Theft Division," a monotone voice said. I provided him with all the information he requested: the vehicle identification number, license plate details, comprehensive description of the car, and the location where it was supposedly stolen from. He sounded completely bored and detached, like this was literally his 50th stolen vehicle report that particular day, his voice flat and mechanical as he went through his standard questions. He informed me they'd keep an eye out for the vehicle, mentioned that these situations sometimes resolved themselves within a few days when cars turned up abandoned somewhere, and told me my insurance company would require the official report number for processing any claims. That evening when I got home, Emma was incredibly apologetic about the whole situation. She'd prepared my absolute favorite meal, homemade lasagna with garlic bread fresh from the oven, and set our dining table with candles, creating a romantic atmosphere. She kept repeating over and over that she'd personally pay for whatever insurance deductible we ended up facing, that Melissa felt absolutely horrible and devastated about what had happened. I explained to her that it wasn't necessarily entirely her fault, but I was genuinely frustrated and upset. She'd handed over my car keys to someone without even sending me a quick text message first to check if it was okay. We'd been sharing an apartment together for well over a year at that point. That kind of significant decision involving my personal property should have been discussed between us as a couple before any action was taken. She promised me, with actual tears streaming down her face, that something like this would absolutely never happen again. I desperately wanted to believe her words and trust that promise. I really genuinely did want to believe her. 2 days later, on Thursday afternoon around 3 o'clock, I received another call from a different police officer while I was sitting at my desk debugging some problematic code for work. "Mr. Anderson, this is Detective Martinez with the Auto Theft Division," a new voice said. "We've located your vehicle." Relief flooded through my entire body instantly, like a weight had been lifted. "Oh, thank God. That's incredible news," I said, feeling the tension start to release from my shoulders. "Where did you find it parked?" The detective's response made my blood run cold. It was on a residential street in the Greenwood neighborhood, parked directly outside 2847 Oak Street. "Does that particular address mean anything to you?" I said no. It didn't ring any bells. I should have known something was wrong from the pause that followed, the kind of heavy silence that makes your heart start racing. "The homeowner at that residence is a Ryan Miller. Does that name sound familiar to you at all?" My blood turned to ice in my veins. Ryan Miller, Emma's ex-boyfriend from her college days. The guy she'd been in a relationship with for 2 full years before we ever met. The relationship had apparently ended on difficult and messy terms, though Emma had always insisted to me they maintained zero contact anymore, that he'd completely moved on with his life, and so had she. She'd mentioned his name maybe twice total in our entire 3-year relationship, always with the clear message that chapter of her life was totally closed and irrelevant to us. "Yeah," I said slowly, my throat suddenly feeling tight and constricted. "I know exactly who that person is. Detective Martinez told me I needed to come down to the police station right away. There was what he called a complication with my vehicle. When I asked what kind of complication he meant, he said it would be significantly better if we discussed the matter face-to-face in person rather than over the phone. I immediately left work, informing my supervisor it was an urgent family emergency that couldn't wait. Detective Martinez met me in a small, cold, sterile interview room at the station that reeked of stale coffee and harsh industrial cleaning solution. He didn't waste a single second with pleasantries or small talk. He explained that when they'd located my vehicle, they'd run the license plates through their system, confirmed it matched my theft report perfectly, and then conducted a standard procedure check of the vehicle for any signs of tampering, damage, or evidence related to why it might have been taken. When they opened the trunk, he said, sliding a photograph across the cold metal table toward me, my trunk was absolutely packed full. Not with my personal belongings or random items, but with clear evidence of criminal activity. There were unopened packages with shipping labels still attached and visible. A brand new MacBook Pro laptop still sealed in its original manufacturer's box. 2 iPad tablets with the distinctive Apple Store price stickers still intact on them. Expensive jewelry pieces that caught and reflected the camera flash in the photograph. A luxury designer handbag that probably cost thousands of dollars, and a thick stack of credit cards bound together with a simple rubber band. Everything in that trunk appeared brand new, obviously high-value merchandise, and absolutely none of it belonged to me. "What the hell is all this stuff?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Detective Martinez explained in a measured tone that the items visible in the photograph matched descriptions from 6 completely separate theft reports that had been filed over the previous 3 weeks. The crimes included residential burglaries in the wealthy Highland Park neighborhood, multiple package thefts from apartment building lobbies and porches, and a violent smash-and-grab robbery at an electronics store on the east side of town. I physically couldn't catch my breath. The walls of that small interview room felt like they were pressing inward, closing in on me from all sides. The detective asked if I was understanding what he was telling me. He clarified they weren't formally accusing me of anything at this point, but they absolutely needed to understand and establish how approximately $15,000 worth of confirmed stolen property had ended up in my vehicle's trunk. I confirmed the timeline for him. Yes, I'd reported the car stolen exactly 2 days prior on Tuesday afternoon. My girlfriend Emma had lent the vehicle to her friend Melissa without asking my permission first. Melissa had then claimed it was stolen from a Target store parking lot while she was inside shopping. The detective carefully wrote down every word in his official notebook, his pen scratching steadily across the paper. He asked directly if I'd had any prior knowledge whatsoever of these items before today. I told him absolutely none, zero knowledge. I hadn't even opened my trunk or accessed it in over a week, possibly even longer than that. I kept my gym bag and workout clothes in the back seat of the car, and I simply hadn't needed the trunk space for anything recently. I worked from home remotely twice a week, and on the days when I drove to the office, I just grabbed my laptop bag and headed out. I had no reason to look in the trunk. He studied my face carefully and intently for a long moment, his experienced eyes searching for any microscopic sign of deception or dishonesty. After what felt like an eternity, he said they would need to verify my whereabouts and alibis for the specific dates and times when these various thefts had occurred. They would also need to conduct formal interviews with both Melissa Morrison and my girlfriend Emma. I provided him with all their contact information, my hands visibly shaking and trembling as I typed the phone numbers into his cell phone. They released me after taking my complete and detailed statement, but they informed me I couldn't drive my car home. It was being officially retained and held as evidence, now part of an active, ongoing criminal investigation. I called a rideshare service to take me home, sitting silently in the back seat the entire ride while my brain raced frantically through every possible scenario and explanation. This clearly wasn't some random occurrence or coincidence. Someone had very deliberately and intentionally used my personal vehicle to commit multiple serious crimes, and then had conveniently abandoned it parked directly outside Ryan's house. But why specifically Ryan's house? Was Melissa somehow involved in this scheme? And the question that made my stomach physically churn with nausea, did Emma know anything at all about what was happening? Emma was at home when I walked through the door around 7 that evening. She was sitting comfortably on our couch with her laptop open, probably working on one of her freelance graphic design projects for a client. She glanced up with a genuinely bright, cheerful smile, asking if the police had found my car yet, mentioning she'd been obsessively checking her phone all day for updates. I told her, yeah, they'd found it, at Ryan's house. Her smile completely vanished instantly, replaced by utter confusion and shock. What? What do you mean at Ryan's house? I explained slowly and clearly that my car had been parked outside Ryan Miller's residence, her ex-boyfriend Ryan, and when the police officers opened the trunk to inspect it, they discovered it was loaded full of stolen merchandise. Thousands and thousands of dollars worth of electronics, jewelry, and credit cards. Physical evidence from at least 6 entirely different crimes. She jumped up from the couch so quickly and suddenly that her laptop nearly crashed onto the floor. That's absolutely insane! Why would Ryan do something like that? I don't understand any of this. How would your car even end up there? I asked her directly and plainly, when she'd last had any communication with Ryan. She insisted firmly she hadn't spoken to him in years, not since well before we'd started dating. You know that, she said defensively. Do I? I responded. Because right now, honestly, I don't know what I know anymore. Nothing makes sense. Her facial expression hardened, becoming defensive and guarded. I told her I wasn't trying to imply or suggest anything. I was simply asking straightforward, direct questions that deserved honest answers. Because my personal vehicle was discovered at her ex-boyfriend's house, completely stuffed with stolen goods exactly 2 days after she'd lent it to her friend, without bothering to ask me first. She claimed there was no way Melissa would be involved in something like this, that I was being unfair. I asked a simple question. Does Melissa know Ryan? Emma went completely and utterly silent, every trace of color draining from her face like someone had pulled a plug. "Emma, answer the question," I demanded, my voice harder than I'd intended. She finally admitted in a quiet voice that yes, they had dated, briefly, after she and Ryan broke up years ago. It was just for a few months during that period, nothing serious or long-term. The entire room seemed to tilt and spin around me. I sat down hard in the nearby armchair, feeling like the floor had disappeared beneath my feet. "And you didn't think to mention that extremely relevant detail when you handed my car keys over to your ex-boyfriend's ex-girlfriend?" I asked incredulously. She said it had all happened so long ago, like 5 or 6 years in the past. She genuinely didn't think it mattered anymore or was relevant to our current lives. "It matters now," I said, my voice rising despite my efforts to stay calm. "It matters a whole hell of a lot right now." She told me not to yell at her, that she hadn't done anything wrong in this situation. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "You lent my car to someone without asking me, and that someone apparently gave it to a criminal who used my vehicle to commit multiple burglaries. How's that not doing anything wrong?" We argued intensely for another full hour, our voices getting louder and more frustrated, before I finally retreated to the guest bedroom, too angry and confused and betrayed to even look at her face anymore. The following day, Friday morning, the police brought Melissa in for formal questioning at the station. I didn't receive any details directly from her. We weren't in contact. But Detective Martinez called me that evening around 6 o'clock with an update that somehow made everything infinitely worse than it already was. "Mr. Anderson, Melissa Morrison came in this morning for questioning. After approximately 2 hours of interrogation, she admitted to lying about the theft from the Target parking lot." I felt my heart sink even further. The detective continued. "She confessed that she actually lent your car to Ryan Miller. She claims she had absolutely no idea what he was planning to use it for. According to her statement, he told her he desperately needed to transport some furniture for a friend, and his personal truck had broken down with mechanical problems." I asked if Ryan had confessed to anything or provided any statement. Detective Martinez explained that Ryan had immediately requested an attorney the moment they brought him in for questioning and refused to say a single word without his legal counsel present in the room. However, they'd successfully executed a search warrant on his residence that same afternoon. Inside his garage, they'd discovered additional stolen property, including several items that perfectly matched the inventory list from my trunk. They were building what he called a very solid case against Ryan Miller. "So, Melissa was in on it," I said, feeling a cold fury building. She knew exactly what he was doing. The detective explained they were still actively investigating the full extent of her involvement and knowledge. Her official story was that Ryan had asked to borrow a car specifically for moving furniture, and she'd offered mine since she had access to the keys through Emma. She maintained she had absolutely zero knowledge of the thefts or what he was actually doing with the vehicle. The district attorney would ultimately decide whether to charge her as an accessory to the crimes or potentially offer her immunity in exchange for her testimony against Ryan, depending on what evidence they could uncover about her actual knowledge and participation. I hung up the phone and immediately went to find Emma. She was in our kitchen making tea, her movements slow and exhausted. She'd clearly been crying for hours, her eyes red and puffy. "Melissa lent my car to Ryan," I said flatly. "She admitted everything to the police today." Emma's face went completely pale, the ceramic mug slipping slightly in her trembling hand. What?" she whispered. "Your friend, who you gave my keys to without asking, handed my car over to your ex-boyfriend so he could drive around the city committing burglaries," I said, each word precise and cutting. "And now I'm potentially implicated in multiple serious felonies. Do you understand how serious this is?" Emma insisted she'd had no idea any of this was happening, her voice desperate. I asked her how often she actually communicated with Melissa regularly. She said maybe once a week, sometimes more. They texted frequently more than they actually called. I asked if in all those conversations over the past weeks and months, Melissa had ever mentioned Ryan's name. Had she ever mentioned they were back in contact again or seeing each other? Emma's eyes immediately welled up with fresh tears, and she didn't answer right away. "Did you know they were seeing each other again?" I pressed, my voice hard. She hesitated for just a moment, but that single moment of hesitation revealed everything I needed to know. "Sarah, tell me the truth, right now." She finally broke. "Okay, yes, Jessica mentioned a few weeks ago, maybe a month, that she'd randomly run into Ryan at a downtown coffee shop and they'd talked for a while, but She made it sound completely casual, like a one-time friendly catch-up thing between old acquaintances who happened to cross paths. She absolutely didn't say they were dating or anything serious was happening. "And you didn't think to tell me this?" I asked, incredulous. "You didn't think I'd want to know that your friend was reconnecting with your ex?" She got defensive immediately. "Why would I tell you? It's not my business who my friends see or talk to. That's their private life." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "It became your business the exact second you gave her access to my property. It became my business the moment my car ended up being used in actual crimes." We didn't speak at all the rest of that night. The silence throughout our apartment was absolutely suffocating, heavy, and oppressive. I slept in the guest room again, lying awake staring at the ceiling until almost 3 in the morning, my mind spinning endlessly through every single conversation we'd ever had, every interaction, desperately trying to figure out if I'd somehow missed obvious warning signs that should have told me something was wrong. Over that weekend, the story broke in the local news media Saturday morning. There it was on my phone screen. Serial burglar arrested after stolen goods found in borrowed vehicle. They didn't name me specifically, thank God for that small mercy. But the article mentioned the car had been borrowed from an unsuspecting party who had no knowledge whatsoever of the crimes being committed. My phone absolutely exploded with text messages from friends, family members, and coworkers asking if it was my car the news story was referring to. I ignored the vast majority of them. What was I supposed to say? How could I possibly explain this nightmare? Monday morning, while I was making coffee and mentally preparing myself for yet another incredibly awkward day of working from home with Emma still in the apartment, my phone rang. Melissa's name appeared on the screen. I stared at it for 3 full rings before finally deciding to answer. "Marcus, I'm so sorry," she said immediately, her voice shaking. "I need you to understand that I didn't know what Ryan was actually doing with your car. You have to believe me." "Why should I believe a single word that comes out of your mouth?" I asked coldly. "Melissa, you lied to the police officers. You lied to Emma. You took my car without my permission and handed it over to a criminal." She insisted desperately that she didn't know he was committing crimes. He'd told her a completely believable story about helping a friend move furniture out of a storage unit. He'd said his truck had serious transmission problems, and he just needed to borrow something reliable for a few hours. When Emma had mentioned that I'd supposedly said she could borrow the car, I cut her off immediately. "I never, ever said you could borrow my car. Emma made that decision completely on her own without consulting me." She backtracked quickly. "Okay, right. When Emma said I could borrow it, I thought one more person using it wouldn't hurt anything. I was just trying to help Ryan out with what seemed like a reasonable request. I didn't think it through." "That's exactly the problem," I said, my voice hard. "You didn't think. None of you thought about consequences or asking permission or showing basic respect for other people's property." She agreed I was completely right and apologized again. I asked her directly how long she and Ryan had been back together. Complete silence on the other end of the line. Just the sound of her breathing. "Jessica, answer me." She finally admitted it had been about 6 weeks, maybe closer to 2 months. But they'd been deliberately keeping their relationship quiet because they knew Emma wouldn't approve. And their breakup years ago had been really messy and complicated. They just didn't want to create unnecessary drama, so they'd kept everything private between them. "And you thought the perfect solution was to lie to everyone and involve my car in whatever criminal scheme he had going?" She insisted one more time she didn't know about any scheme, that she was telling me the complete truth. "You know what? I don't care anymore," I said, and hung up. I immediately blocked her number. Tuesday afternoon, Detective Martinez called again. I was in the middle of a video conference call, but excused myself the instant I saw his number. He wanted to give me a final update on the case. They'd formally charged Ryan Miller with 6 counts of burglary, multiple counts of theft, possession of stolen property, and trafficking in stolen goods. The district attorney was prosecuting him extremely aggressively and pushing for maximum sentences. I asked what was happening with Melissa. He explained she'd agreed to cooperate fully and testify against Ryan in exchange for significantly reduced charges. She would plead guilty to a misdemeanor charge of accessory after the fact and would receive probation with community service, but no actual jail time. I asked if she was basically getting away with everything. He explained that her cooperation counted for something substantial with the DA. Without her testimony as a witness, proving Ryan's intent and establishing an accurate timeline would be much more difficult. It wasn't an ideal outcome, But that's how the criminal justice system operated. What about me? I asked. Am I completely cleared of everything? He confirmed I was totally and absolutely clear of any wrongdoing or suspicion. My alibi had checked out perfectly for all the theft dates and times. I was either at my office with multiple witnesses who could verify my presence, or I was at home with verifiable computer activity and digital timestamps that established my location. There was absolutely zero evidence I'd had any knowledge or involvement in these crimes whatsoever. I was purely a sufferer in this situation. My vehicle had been used without my knowledge or consent. I didn't feel like a sufferer, though. I felt like a complete idiot for trusting the wrong people with my property and my life. Emma and I had the final big conversation that night. I told her I couldn't trust her judgment anymore, period. Lending my car without permission was bad enough on its own, but the complete and utter lack of awareness about who she was lending it to, combined with who her friend was secretly involved with romantically, showed a level of carelessness and fundamentally poor judgment I simply couldn't overlook or forgive. How could I possibly build a future and a life with someone who didn't think through even basic consequences of their actions? She cried harder than I'd ever seen her cry. She apologized repeatedly, over and over. She said she'd do absolutely anything to make it right, that she'd go to couples counseling, that she'd completely cut Melissa out of her life forever. But some things simply can't be repaired with apologies and promises, no matter how sincere they might be. Trust, once shattered this badly and completely, doesn't just magically heal with time. It's been 8 full weeks now since everything happened. Ryan took a plea deal rather than go to trial. 3 years in state prison plus full restitution payments to all the sufferers. His attorney apparently advised him that taking the case to trial would almost certainly result in significantly more prison time. Melissa got 2 years of probation and 200 hours of community service. She moved to Arizona shortly after sentencing to live with family members there. Emma and I broke up in early September, approximately 3 weeks after the car incident. It wasn't explosive or dramatic like breakups in movies. We just sat down together one quiet evening and acknowledged what we both already knew deep down. The trust was completely gone, destroyed beyond repair. I couldn't look at her without remembering how her poor judgment and careless decision had nearly destroyed my entire life. She moved out 2 weeks later, staying temporarily with her sister until she found her own apartment across town. We haven't spoken since then, except for one brief text exchange about dividing up the final utility bills and deciding who would keep the coffee maker we'd bought together. I finally got my car back last month after it was released from police evidence storage. I paid for professional detailing services twice because I needed to get rid of the persistent feeling that it had been part of something fundamentally dirty and criminal. I still drive it every single day. It's reliable and paid off. But sometimes when I'm loading groceries into the trunk, I pause and think about how quickly your entire life can spiral completely out of control because of other people's decisions and lies. The strange part about all of this? I'm not even angry anymore. The rage has faded into something else. I'm just exhausted. Exhausted by people who don't think about consequences. Exhausted by trusting people who don't deserve that trust. Exhausted by constantly cleaning up messes I didn't create. Exhausted by being collateral damage in other people's drama and bad decisions. But at least I've learned something valuable from this nightmare. Never lend your car to anyone, ever, even if someone you love and trust vouches for them completely. Some lessons cost you a relationship, nearly a criminal record, and months of lost sleep. I changed my locks after Emma moved out and got my spare key back. I'm not dating anyone right now. I'm focusing on myself, my career, and slowly rebuilding my ability to trust people again. Therapy has actually been genuinely helpful in processing everything.